Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy and Postnatal Entrepreneurs Collective podcast. I'm your host, Niamh Cassidy, IBCLC and antenatal educator and business coach and mentor to birth and postpartum workers. Today I'm joined by Bibby, who is a wellness coach for busy women and founder of Live Life Well. She loves working with busy women to improve habits, mindsets and find easy ways to make long-lasting changes. So today we're going to focus on gut health and how it affects our overall well-being, but I'm sure we'll cover lots of other issues as well. So Joanne, thank you very much for joining me. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this work?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you. So I'm a busy mum myself. I have got 2 daughters. I work, have my own business, as you mentioned, and I just know that it's really difficult to find time to look after ourselves. I could totally get that. And I've totally been in the trenches. I remember when I had my 2 little ones, one of them was 2, the other one was a baby, and I just never felt so low. And of course, I wasn't really sleeping. You don't really have time to, wash your face, let alone think about cooking a nourishing meal. So just exhausted, probably suffering a bit from postnatal depression, I think. Just never felt so low and isolated and just overwhelmed with life, really. And around that time, I started using some nutritional products and learning about gut health. And shortly after that, I did a gut reset for myself and just instantly felt so much better. I was still tired, obviously, because I had 2 little ones and still wasn't getting much sleep, but I felt better. And I realized then how important it was to know about the connection between what we eat and our gut health and how we feel and our energy and our emotions and all that kind of stuff. So since then, I've kind of pivoted away from nutrition products and I did a coaching qualification. I'm doing a nutritional coaching qualification at the moment. And just like you mentioned, just love working with women who are in the trenches like I was, just not feeling as good as they know they can, but know they can feel better with some simple changes. So in a nutshell, that's how I got from feeling completely exhausted to feeling better in myself and being able to share that with others.
That's really good. And it can quite often when I ask people about how they got into the work, there's a story about that postpartum period and how things went from there. And so for us, the birth workers, we're very good at supporting the parents in around their health and their nutrition, and especially our postpartum doulas who would cook for parents and who would make sure that they're getting nourishing food that's good for them to help them feel well in themselves. And we know how important that is, but sometimes we don't follow that through in supporting ourselves. So why is it so important that as business owners that we look after ourselves as well?
I think as business owners, and especially, businesswomen in your field who are for sure going to be the most caring, amazing women, just pouring themselves out. I think as women, we're naturally kind of caregivers, but also there's an expectation from society and structures that are in place that we should be caregivers, maybe even more than we should actually give away of ourselves. And I think it's natural, to want to take care, and it's lovely that we do, but we can really lose ourselves in that, and it can be hard to prioritize ourselves. But when we have a passion project, something that we really care about, like our business, especially businesses where we are helping others, it's just so vital. It's so vital that in that mix we are taking care of ourselves. We're just not going to be able to do all the amazing things that we want to do, that we're called to do, and make the difference in the world if we're not prioritizing that, if we're not putting rhythms and habits in place that help us at least feel well, if not feel our best. And it's not just so that we can show up for others or show up in our business, it's so that we can feel good and enjoy life. But I do think if you want a thriving, healthy business, we have to start with like a thriving, healthy us first. But I say that understanding that we are juggling all the plates and it's not easy. I totally get that.
Absolutely. And you made all the points about being caregivers and in our work as well as in our life as well, and how easy it can be to kind of put yourself at the bottom of that pile. And there's a lot more kind of information coming out around not just like the food pyramid and how to eat a balanced diet, but how much the gut actually affects so much more of our bodies and of our minds. So for people who would have limited understanding of gut health, what does it mean, and what are some of the things we can do to support it?
Love this question. Obsessed with gut health. Could talk about it all day. I will try not to. I will try and give you it in a nutshell. But yeah, our gut health does impact every area of our well-being. It's really, really core and key to all the ways we feel. So our digestion, obviously, our energy, our mood, our hormones, our immune system, our skin, like everything. It's really integral. But it doesn't have to be complicated. I think that's the really good thing. That's the good news. And there's so much information out there in the wellbeing world. I get that it can be so overwhelming and we can wonder where even to start with it all. But for me, habits have got to be simple and sustainable. So I love thinking about our gut as like a garden. That's a really easy way for me to remember it and to share it with others. So if you think of your garden and how you'd like it to look, you'd want all beautiful variety of plants blooming and flourishing. And if you think of the plants that you want in your garden to be like your good bacteria, and like the weeds and the other stuff to be like the bad bacteria, we need both. Weeds aren't all bad. Some of them are lovely in their right place, but in the right amounts. So you really want to think about nourishing and feeding that good bacteria so you have that balance in your gut, and then that's how you'll feel really well. So if you think if you were like giving your garden a bit of an overhaul, you'd want to feed the plants that you want to flourish. And the best way to think about feeding your gut garden is to feed it with plants, like a variety of gorgeous plants. So fruit and vegetables. Our good bacteria thrive on lots of fiber. That's what they kind of feed off. So if you're getting a good variety of all different colours and types of plants, fruit, vegetables, pulses, nuts, seeds, you're going to have a thriving gut garden. And a really easy way to do that is to eat the rainbow. So I encourage my clients to try and eat 30 different plants a week. And it's not actually as hard as you think. Keep a little tracker, do it with your kids, make it really fun. See if you can hit that 30, try some different things. And then you don't want to overfeed the weeds. You want to kind of keep them minimized. So your bad bacteria loves all the things that we know we shouldn't eat, but we love. So like the sugary stuff, the refined carbs, alcohol, caffeine, things like that. So it's not to say never have them. That's not true at all. We should enjoy all different foods, but having them in moderation and having more of the gorgeous plants, those sort of things, will just help keep everything in balance. But then also thinking about lifestyle, for our garden to be healthy, we need to also think about our self-care, our rest, our movement, because we could eat a perfect diet, but if we're completely stressed and exhausted, we're not going to be absorbing all that lovely nutrition. So just making sure we try and get some rest and sleep, do things that, give us rest. So active hobbies, like crocheting, journaling, breath work, meditation, they all signal to our bodies that we're safe and that we can digest our foods well. Movement's great, gentle movement, walking, and just making sure you're connecting with positive people and having fun as well gives us that signal that we can rest and be safe and live as well as we're meant to. So pretty simple stuff really, but not always easy to do.
Yeah, sometimes, it's easy to understand the things that we should do, and the implementation is that little bit more difficult. But
Yes.
for people, how would you know that maybe you need to do a little bit of work on this, like that maybe your gut health needed a bit of improvement?
Yeah, sure. So sort of converse to the benefits of having good gut health that I mentioned, like the energy, the mood. So if you weren't feeling as good in those areas, if you're feeling exhausted all the time, if your mood was low or up and down, your hormone cycle was out of whack, if you're having really heavy premenstrual symptoms, if you're having lots of breakouts in your skin, eczema, acne, things like that. If you just knew your digestion was off, I think we know, don't we, if we're getting a lot of bloating or we're not going to toilet regularly, all those things, if you're getting run down a lot, getting a lot of colds and flus. And for me this winter, I just knew like my mood was so low, and I think it was part of the weather. We all feel lower in winter, but I just knew I wasn't eating that well. So sort of February, March time, I was like, I'm going to get back on track with my healthy gut habits. And I just felt so much better. I think you just know when you're not really looking after yourself, because it's all these simple things that we know we should be doing, like we said. So you'll just feel it. And also to say some of those symptoms, you should also get checked out at your GP, if you're having really bad hormonal symptoms or digestive issues. But often taking care of your gut, having a bit of a reset can improve those things, and then maybe see what you're left with and get those checked out with your GP as well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned hormones there as well. And I know a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about perimenopause and how that affects all of us in so many different ways. And can that affect kind of how your gut works or its health?
Absolutely. I am entering that stage of my life right now. So I've been doing a deep dive on all of this stuff. And yeah, our gut health and our hormones are so linked. We form a lot of our hormones in our gut. So estrogen, especially, which is the one we want to keep hold of as long as possible. We actually have a little estrogen factory in our gut called our estrobolome. And our gut and our estrobolome have a really lovely relationship. When our gut health is good and thriving, it supports our estrogen production and vice versa. So it's actually really important, more than ever, probably, to look after our gut health in menopause. And what that will do is, if we're able to implement some of these simple habits that we've spoken about, is it means that we'll be able to navigate that a lot better and probably manage some of the symptoms. It's definitely worth thinking about menopause. And I think especially things like alcohol can be less helpful in menopause, sadly, because sometimes all you want to do is have a glass of red wine and forget about it all. But that can really knock us off. So yeah, just eating well, gentle movement, rest can make a really big difference to how we get through menopause.
And how important is kind of that movement element of it to your, we know for your overall well-being, obviously we want to stay um mobile and well, but what effect does it have kind of then on your gut and your digestion?
Yeah, they do have a big impact on each other. So I know for myself, if I can move after I've eaten, I feel a lot better. There's a couple of reasons for that. If we're moving regular through the day, especially after a meal, it does help us just digest our food better rather than like kind of sitting. That feeling when it's just sitting in your tummy. It helps keeps us regular again, which is great. But also the really interesting link it has is that it helps us manage our blood sugar. So if you're able to get up and go for even a 10-minute walk after a meal, it helps our muscles absorb the sugar from our foods, and then it stops you getting that kind of spike and that crash after we eat. A lot of what I do is trying to support women with their energy and balancing their blood sugar and avoiding those sort of peaks and troughs through the day. So factoring some gentle movement into your day can be really helpful and just sustaining your energy and feeling better. But also, I definitely find for myself, if I am moving regularly in a way that feels good for me, I don't like to think about it as exercise and pressure to move lots and look a certain way. It's more about how it makes you feel. I know if I'm moving regularly and feeling good, I just naturally then make kind of better food choices. You don't want to sabotage all your good effort, do you? So your mood's better, so you're feeling better about yourself, so then you're more likely to choose food that's nourishing rather than food that just feels good in the moment. So I think psychologically even there's a big link between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know, I suppose, from a obvious point of view, that when we're eating we should sit down and pay attention to our food and really be in the moment of eating and not trying to do lots of different things at once. But the reality for a lot of people who are running businesses and who are out seeing clients all day, or who are attending a birth and they might be there for 24 or 36 hours, that there's a lot of eating on the go. So would you have any kind of tips for people who that's just part of their life and something that they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing is to not beat yourself up if that's your situation, because then we just feel worse about ourselves and more stressed, and that's not helping anything. But I'd say there's two different areas I would think about in terms of that. If you are got a really busy schedule, you're rarely at home to sort of prepare things as you're eating, is just trying to be a little bit organized and thinking ahead, and just thinking what you can prep at the start of the week that you can then grab from the fridge and go. And thinking about balancing your blood sugar in terms of having some protein and healthy fats at each meal. Like carbs are fine, but if you can like grab a handful of nuts with a meal to provide some of that protein and healthy fats, it's going to just balance out your blood sugar then, again, stop it spiking. Thinking about healthy snacks you can make as well, having like veggie sticks and hummus. Yeah, just things that are nourishing, got all those plants in them that you can have on the go. It's not so much the eating on the go, it's sometimes more about what you're eating. So a little bit of planning and preparation, or just knowing what you can grab from the shop that's a bit better for you. And the second thing is, even if you can't sit at home at your dining table to eat a meal, just try and slow down, even for a minute. Like take a few deep breaths before you eat. Give your nervous system that message that you're safe and that you can take your time, if possible. will just help you digest that food more, be a bit more mindful about it, enjoy it, feel fuller and satisfied so you don't then need a snack half an hour later. Sometimes we just have seasons of life and try and do those little things that help you kind of navigate them better.
You've mentioned a couple of times about this need to feel safe and to have your nervous system settled for when you're eating or for digestion, I think. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been learning more about it as well. It is fascinating. So if you think about it, it's all to do with that kind of fight or flight reaction, we had, and we've learned over centuries to help us feel safe. And, if we're in fight or flight, if we are in our nervous system a lot, in our sympathetic nervous system, when life is stressful, we're bombarded by external stress and internal and home life and everything. So it's natural that our nervous systems get triggered regularly, and that's okay, that's normal. But it's when we don't kind of calm them down and come back to our regulated nervous system that can become a problem. Because if you think about it, if you think you're in danger, if you think you're not safe, if you think a bear's going to come out of the woods and chase you, or you're going to hear something on the news, you go into that fight or flight. And we don't always have time in our busy lives to calm ourselves down. So then our body's natural reaction is to just keep our very vital organs going, so our heart, our lungs, and it will not care about our digestive system. So it'll almost like shut down the signals to our digestive system. So like I said, that's why you could eat the perfect diet but still not feel well or have good gut health, because your body is not prioritizing your digestion and your nutrient absorption. So if you can make that little switch and taking a few moments before you eat to slow down, take a few deep breaths. Breath work's amazing, and you don't have to spend hours at it every day, like literally a couple of deep breaths. Like, you don't breathe slowly when you're running away from a bear. So you are kind of almost tricking your body or telling your body that you are safe and it's okay to slow down and eat and absorb. A bit like when we sleep at night, when we're doing all those functions to reset. So yeah, it's a really simple trick, but it's so important, and it can make a really big difference to our well-being, but also just how we feel in our bodies. Feeling like calm and safe in our bodies when we are rushing about is really powerful.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about the importance of that, and fight or flight and the adrenaline that comes with that is something that we would talk a lot about to new parents. We talk about it in relation to birth and trying to keep yourself calm and regulated because of those systems, as you were just mentioning. And it's really interesting to be reminded about that for ourselves, and in particular in relation to how it can affect our digestion, because so many people have so many digestive discomfort symptoms, women in particular, I think, or maybe it's just because I spend more time with women, but it feels that like nearly everybody has something, whether it's bloating or challenges with certain foods, especially as we age. It seems to be a big thing that's happening for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I'd have to check the stats, but I'm sure scientifically more women do suffer with digestive problems, and that I don't think that's any surprise considering like how we live our lives in this modern world, but also like the sort of mental load we carry as women. And I'm sure in your industry, you're kind of a lot of the time on call at the end of a phone, and that can be quite triggering. Even if you love what you do, there's probably times where you're just not always totally relaxed or can't switch off. So I think it's probably even more important when you're have that kind of lifestyle, when you can be called out at any moment to a potentially quite stressful situation, to really balance that out with the practices that do top us up and soothe our nervous systems. Yeah, it's definitely something worth thinking about.
And you hear a lot kind of in media about certain foods and herbs and different things that people can take to help with their gut health. And I know you talked about eating the rainbow and the importance of that, but is there anything that's proven to be more beneficial, especially if someone is experiencing symptoms and they want to try and alleviate them in some way?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few things you can think about. So especially if you have had a particularly stressful time, or been on antibiotics, things that might have just knocked your microbiome out of whack a bit, you can sort of top up on your good bacteria. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. And the easiest and best way and cheapest way is to eat some probiotic foods. So some fermented foods. So things like sauerkraut or kimchi, which are just like a fermented vegetables. So sauerkraut, you can make it yourself really easily. Literally just grate up a cabbage with some salt, soak it in its own brine, eat it a few days later, or you can buy it. And then kimchi is a kind of spicier, Eastern version of that. Other things that are great are things like Greek yogurt, things with a culture in it, probiotic yogurts, or kefir, which is a fermented yogurt drink. Or if you want to really sort of make sure your good bacteria are topped up, you can take a probiotic. And I would advise maybe even just once a year for 30 days doing that, just a sort of course of them. You don't have to take them every day, all year round, but it is just worth doing, especially, like I said, if you have been on antibiotics or especially run down. That can just be a good way to top up our microbiome and make sure everything's in balance.
That's brilliant. And that's really interesting to kind of think about doing it once a year, as you said, to just get a little bit of a boost or balance things out again. So are there any other kind of simple habits that you think people can adopt to support them with this?
Yeah, I'd say the other things, the things we probably don't really think about in terms of our well-being, but that are so important are things like fun and connection. I think connection is so important, like especially in business, especially as a new mum, as anyone, like connection's so important. And just making sure you are, as well as looking after what you eat and how you move and how you rest, you're just making time to connect with positive people. Again, people that you feel safe with, that make you feel good. Especially in business, one of my favorite things about having my own business is getting to network with other women. And that's how we met, wasn't it, on a networking group? And I think the women that you meet in business are just some of the best people out there. They're so inspiring and resilient. And actually, that is such an important part of our well-being, is not being isolated and, not feeling like we're alone. Just having that support and encouragement from others is so good for our mental well-being, and getting around other people that are looking after themselves. I think as women we can almost apologize for prioritizing the things we're talking about, like we're not worthy of it, or we're not important, other people are more important than us, which is just not true. But if we make these changes and we sort of share them with the world, we're not showing off or being selfish. We're almost giving other people permission to do the same, to take care of themselves. So finding other friends that think it's important to take care of themselves, finding people to follow that inspire you with their recipes or their habits, just fill your world with people that help you be the best version of you. It's so important, and it's so linked. You can't really separate, what we eat from how we move, from who we hang about with. They're all kind of like equally important in how we feel in ourselves, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And, there is all of those sayings and research to back up that, the people that we spend time with are the way we emulate different things. So if we're spending time with people who are prioritizing their health, who are looking after themselves, that we're more likely to do that. And then the inverse, if we're spending time with people who aren't doing that, then it's going to be harder for us to kind of break free and do that for ourselves. And I've certainly found that in my own journey over the last 6 or 7 months, where I joined a group for nutrition and fitness, and very much that has been what has been able to help me kind of keep on track and not get left, not stop or not quit, and being around other people who are doing those things and are cheering each other on. And it's just so important for any of our habits that we want to create, as you mentioned, around networking for business too, that is something that I encourage, probably on top of anything else nearly, is to be around other business owners. And we don't have to be in the same industry, it's just about being around other business owners who are doing the same things, who are trying to make this work, who are you can learn from, but you can also kind of pick up on their excitement and different things like that. So it's definitely important to surround yourself with the types of people that you want to be.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually really hard to make and sustain changes by ourselves. There's a lot of science behind that too. If you write down your goals and you share them with people, you're like 80% or something more likely to achieve them. And we just shouldn't think that we have to do it by ourselves. Life is much more enjoyable in community, and it's much easier to make and sustain changes with the support and accountability from others.
Yeah. And with the clients that you work with, what do you find are the things that kind of get in the way? So the opposite, that stop this change and progress from being able to happen?
I think a couple of things. The two sort of most common themes I think I find when I first start working with people that this can change quite quickly when we do get into it. But something that people maybe have brought with them are things they've learned from their upbringing. I think our generation, my generation especially, like our mum's generation, were very much part of that diet culture, and all the crazy diets, cabbage soup diet, Atkins diet. And we kind of grew up under those beliefs that women should look a certain way, we should starve ourselves, we should minimize ourselves, shouldn't take up space, and that creates very disordered eating habits, which aren't always about nourishing ourselves. They're about keeping ourselves small and looking a certain way. So that's often something we get stuck into and try and unpick a bit. And then also, I think how we feel about ourselves. We can carry a lot of shame or guilt about when we think we eat too much, or we don't eat the right way. So sort of looking at that and how we think about ourselves and our self-worth. Like, do we actually feel like we deserve to be well? Do we feel like we deserve to ask our partners to support us with our new habits? Do we feel like we deserve to take up a bit more space or take more time to do the things that are going to support our well-being? So I'd say there are a couple of things, but also just the practical things of life. Like, life is really busy and it is hard to get time every week to plan your meals and get your shopping in and cook healthy food. So I think practically that can be challenging, but part of me wonders if we've just maybe got things out of balance. It should take a little bit of time to cook a healthy meal. We don't have time to do that every day, but maybe you could cook twice as much and stick half in the freezer. And there will be days and seasons when we don't have as much time, and that's okay, as long as we come back to prioritizing it and making it okay for that to take up a little bit more time and thought. But there's lots of things we can do to make that easier, like doing our big weekly shop and having things in the cupboard in the fridge that it's easy to whip up a healthy meal, prepping some healthy snacks. So I think we just fall out of love with prioritizing it, but when we do, we start to realize the benefits of why it's so important to do it, because we just start to feel so much better, and then you get hooked on that good feeling and you want to do more of that rather than just the convenience and the grabbing whatever tastes or feels good at the time. But like I said at the start, it's a juggle and I totally get it, but I hope the message that I give to my clients and anyone listening is that you're really worth taking care of. You're worth the time and effort it takes, and you deserve to feel as good as you're meant to feel.
And I think a lot of what you said there is around kind of the mindset of what people feel about themselves, and being able to feel confident in prioritizing their health and the things that they need and want to do to look after that. And I grew up in the 90s. I was a teenager in the 90s. So all of that diet culture, the very thin, the all of that was just a huge part of my psyche, I suppose, of me growing up. And every time then when I tried to look after myself better, it was always focused for me on calorie cutting. You know what I mean? It was about losing weight, and that was the only goal. Whereas what I've learned more recently, or what I've been able to be supported with more recently, I suppose, is that you're looking after yourself for how you feel, for your aging, for being strong, for enjoying your life, as you mentioned. That it's not where was my mindset before had always been that it was weight. That was literally the only reason why you would eat a certain way, would be to lose weight or maintain a certain type of weight. So I think we have a lot of work in undoing all of that.
Yeah, we do. I was exactly the same. Grew up at the same time as you. Had all bombarded with the magazines of saying people were like huge when they were already like stick thin, and apparently that's coming back in, like the size zero thing, and that's just terrifying, isn't it? But I don't know if it's our age. We get to an age when we're like we care less about that and more about how we feel. I think that's a big part of it. But I think society has shifted a bit to more focusing on health than looks, which is fantastic. But yeah, absolutely. I think focusing just on our weight and try to restrict ourselves, it's just never sustainable, is it? It's not like a positive focus. It's always about restriction and counting. But if we can find freedom in that and shift the focus more to like nourishing and how we feel, and absolutely being those hot healthy grannies running about after our grandkids, that's what it's all about for me. That's my main goal in life. And I think about every habit I do now is building that healthy older life, and that's like a really positive motivation, I think.
Yeah, I think it is, and that has been my motivation as well. It's around aging well, you know what I mean, in being able to, I want to live a really long life, and I want to be able to enjoy that life while I'm around. So is there any kind of final thoughts or tips that you would like to kind of add in?
I'm trying to think of anything that I've not already said. I think keep it simple for sure. Like, try not to get overwhelmed by all the information that's out there. And this comes back to eating real, wholesome, healthy foods and having a couple of things in your cupboard that you can rustle up. Like, my favorite thing, if I've not been to the shops, is just to like grab a tin of chickpeas, tin of coconut milk, tin of tomatoes, some spices and onion, whip up a curry. It does not have to be complicated, so don't overwhelm yourself. Figure out a rhythm for you that you can sustain and just enjoy it. Like I said, have fun doing your rainbow tracker with your kids. Uh, Keep it simple. Try not to listen to too much information out there. I know you're on here picking up information, but it's got to be simple to be sustainable. So try not to get overwhelmed. And yeah, just keep taking care of your amazing self.
I think that's lovely. Thank you so much. And if people want to find out more about what you do, Joanne, where is the best place for them to go?
Sure. So I'm probably most active on Instagram. Love the gram. So I'm Joe_live life well on there. I share lots of kind of health living tips, recipes, inspiration, hopefully. And then on my website, which is www.livelifewellness.co.uk, that's where you can find out more about my kind of coaching courses, my one-to-one, 30-day gut reset, my group coaching program, and also some retreats that I run and workshops, and my podcast as well. So that's all on there.
Well, thank you very much. It was lovely chatting with you today. And for everyone who is listening, thank you for joining us. Those links will be in the show notes if you want to find out more about what Joanne does. And as ever, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review or send me a DM on Instagram as well, because I love to hear about what you have taken away from the episodes. Thanks so much.